Hey everyone, this is Brett from Energetic Arts, and welcome to a live training session. Today's topic is loneliness and being alone. And if I can just get you guys to send me a quick chat to make sure everything's working properly, sound and audio and all the rest before we get into it. And while you're doing that, I just have to send out my disclaimer that bear in mind that I'm also a student and an artist of this type of training and information. And if the topics get a little bit too intense, and if you're having trouble decompressing or pulling out of some certain states that we purposely go into, then make sure you seek a practitioner, a professional, all that kind of thing, and look after yourself, guys. Don't suffer all by yourself. Okay. So, um, the topic of loneliness and being alone, I wanted to bring up because, during this type of work, hey guys, during this type of work, you're going to need to spend time alone, basically. And you're going to be uh, coming hard up against feelings of being lonely. Now, I just want to make sure that before we go into this, you know that this is part of the process and this is a normal feeling, and no one's immune. Okay. Everyone has varying degrees of loneliness from time to time, and it's just something that we have to confront and deal with. And so this reminds me of a scene in the old classic Lawrence of Arabia, where in the opening act, the first act, he does this trick where he lights a match and he lets it burn all the way down to his fingers until it burns out. And he doesn't really give much response. And the guys who are watching him do this, it's like a party trick. They say, "Geez, Lawrence, doesn't that hurt? How do you do it?" And he says, "Of course it hurts. The secret is not minding that it hurts." And so when it comes to loneliness and other emotions and states where, they're typically uncomfortable, we need to have a little bit of detachment from it and just allow those emotions to be there, because often these things that we deal with, like loneliness, is a gateway to higher states of freedom. So it's a bit like, trying to find that place of paradise. The closer you get, the more resistance you're going to come up against, and the more signs that are going to be popping up saying, wrong way, go back, turn around, your life's at risk, don't come any closer. And it's one of those things where, as we get closer to that state of breakthrough, that freedom that we're seeking on the other side of these emotions, they're going to become more and more intense. And so when we're going into these practices and dealing with these types of emotions like loneliness, at first I'd recommend you just take it easy and don't go too hard into these things. Just take your time, experience the state, and give yourself an exit strategy to be able to pull out of it and to switch into something more desirable. So on the other side of loneliness is being alone. And when you're doing meditation, when you're doing a lot of internal work, you once you get through that state of loneliness, you're going to want to be alone. It's going to be one of those things where you're going to want that time where you're not going to be distracted, where you can focus, and where you can lose yourself in time. And so think about it like this, because the main reason for this type of training is to be able to get in touch with those deeper programming, those deeper drives that direct us. And excuse me, I'm a little bit croaky today. I'm releasing some stuff out of my body. So we want to be able to get into these deeper layers of the programs. And I just want to point out that things like loneliness, that's a layer that we need to pass through to get into those deeper drives. Because when we can process that energy, that emotion of being lonely, we can pass through into being alone and enjoy that time. And introverts don't have a problem with this. Extroverts seem to struggle a little bit more, typically, generally. But when you get into that zone of working on yourself and reprogramming yourself, it can become really interesting. It can be a lot of fun. And that's what I want you guys to get out of this tonight, is that once you confront and pass through these layers like an atmosphere in a dive, once you are able to equalize those states, those emotions, then you can go deeper. And when you can go deeper, you can get access to more parts of your coding. And when you get access to more of your coding, and you can start to get skilled at altering that, when you come back out and you get into a normal state of being again, whatever that is, you can start to see and feel and experience the difference in your coding. And so this is like, the tangible results of being able to pass through here is to see lasting changes, and to more easily manifest and create, or more to the point, to align with potential realities that are already there, that lie beyond the basic barriers of your programming, like loneliness. So does that make sense so far, guys? Just give me a quick shout if there's any questions before we move into the next part of this session. Make sure you're all with me and all on board. Excuse me. And so, great. And so what it also does is it affords us time to let the magnetism of past energetic signature programming run its course and come to an end. So think about it like this. Another way of putting it is, if you see a bicycle, you're on a bicycle, you got lots of momentum, and if you quickly just lay the bike down on the side, sometimes the wheel will spin, and it'll keep spinning for quite some time, but eventually, under its own momentum, it will slow down and stop. And so that's what we want to do in these exercises, is we want to confront these emotions like loneliness, for example, which is very common, by the way. Everyone feels this, and everyone, social anxiety, all these things that we're currently dealing with, not being able to connect with others, and all that. that's all due to, we'll put that down to at least contributing to loneliness. And here's another part of the illusion is that most people avoid feelings of loneliness, so they keep themselves busy and they create drama in their life and they create circumstances to perpetuate familiar experiences, even though they're maybe not what they really want, all to avoid what they think is feelings of loneliness. But it could be the other way around too. When you break through all this, you could experience the opposite extreme, and you could experience levels of connectedness that you haven't experienced before. You could experience levels of sensitivity that you haven't experienced before, and you can experience levels of connectedness that go far beyond your body. All right, so I was listening to Alan Watts today, and he made the argument, and he has this great way of just pulling and deconstructing certain beliefs and attitudes and neutralizing them to the point where you're like, now what? And so what he says is, your personality, who you think you are, we have this consensus belief that you started when you were born, but that's just an arbitrary thought. Like, did you start when you were born? Did you start when you're in the womb? Did you start at conception? Did you start when your parents, met? Did you start when your parents were born? And you can go on and on and on, and it all becomes one continuous event. And so you can start to have this experience of being totally connected to everything. People say this like it's an awakening where you're connected, you're one with the universe, you are the universe. Okay. And from what I've seen, and from the stories I've heard of other people who've had this experience, some people call this a mystical experience, is that it's very short lived because it's quite an intense current of energy to be able to take in and to stay with inside a human body, right? It's kind of like trying to process the whole internet on your phone. You can't. You can only sort of download bits and pieces at a time, packets of information, before your capacity fills up to the brim and starts overflowing, and then you start crashing. Okay, so that's basically the gist of that, and that can be very it can be very scary if you're not ready for it, and if you haven't trained for it, and if you haven't expanded your awareness and increased your capacity and strengthened your code, basically your energetic field, to be able to take that amplitude of energy on. And it not only is it such a big energy, but it alters you at the same time. And so the personality, who we think we are, as this person with a story and an identity and a past and behaviors and habits and programming, this can be very what's the word? What's the word? I was going to say discombobulating, but that's one way of putting it. But it's disorientating. So when you come back, it takes you a little while to adjust. So, sometimes rather than freak ourselves out by doing that, it's just easier to it's just easy to reduce it down and stay inside the personality, the egoic mind, the story of our past. And so, when it comes to this kind of feeling of loneliness, when we go into it, and I've talked to people about, well, I can't sit still, and I don't like being alone. And it's like, well, because when you shut off the external distractions and you're not busy anymore, what happens is everything starts to play out. You get to see that wheel spinning, and you get to see how much momentum it is. And you know that it's going to take some time for that to unwind, and there's going to be emotions behind that. And so the mind goes into calculating and takes itself completely out of the moment. And all that's just to hold that emotion at bay. And so if we're doing that continuously, and we've been doing that for a long time, then you can only imagine how much of your energy and your focus and all your mindset and your programming and how much of your actions each and every day is set up to keep that emotion at bay. And so when we start to confront this type of thing, I like to use the analogy of holding a beach ball under the waterline. And it's so like you're trying to keep this emotion managed and under the waterline. And probably in the past, you've gotten tired or exhausted, and it's splashed up and it's hit you in the face, and it's made a mess, and you've had to deal with all that goes with it. But the technique, or the principle behind the technique that we're going to use tonight to discharge this, is to let the air out of the ball. Okay, so while we're holding it down, consciously or unconsciously, we're going to start to go into it and release the pressure, and eventually the beach ball will just deflate and it will just rise to the surface, and then over time you can just pick it up and take it out, and there's no splash, there's no drama, there's no trauma, and you can just move on. And then all that energy that you've been using to hold everything at bay can be reused for something new, like manifesting, or just making life easier, because life's hard enough already. We don't need to make it any more complicated. There's plenty of problems that haven't been solved yet, if you're a problem solver. So tonight, or whatever time it is, wherever you are, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just basically lead you in, and you're going to go into the black space. You're going to go into the darkness behind your eyes. Put your blindfolds on, and I'm just going to leave you there for a while. Okay. And I want you to pay attention to what goes on. Like, are you calculating how long it's going to take? Is the voice chatter trying to pull you out of it because it doesn't want to feel certain things? Are you experiencing aches and pains in your body physically? Are you projecting into the future? Are you trying to manage things? Are you trying to not relive certain experiences in the past? Are you having arguments with people? All of these things are going to, may come up for you, may not. Maybe you'll have a beautiful, pleasant experience, and if you do, go with it. But if these other things come up, that's what you're meditating for. You're meditating to be able to deal with these certain things. So, to use a metaphor, it's like if we're going to start reprogramming your computer, okay, and when we start to get into it and we start to look into the code, If you start to get pop-ups and error messages and bugs start to come to the surface, we're not trying to push them aside to, install something new on top of it. We want that to come up so we can see what it is. We take note of it. If you've got your notepad and you come out of the focus practice, write it down, take note or take a mental note, and start to, without any effort, just feel your way through the emotion, discharge it, acknowledge the thoughts, the mind chatter, take note of it, pay attention to it, and then allow the pressure to discharge itself. And as you focus on it, you start to change it. Remember the observer effect in quantum theory. Just the mere act of observing it changes it. So we want to bring that all to awareness. Realize it's not who you are, it's who you've been. And you want that to remain, or whether you want to delete it or alter it or update it. If everyone's clear on that, we'll get into some. Be just a bit of warning. This is going to be uh, when I say this, walls, there's gaps, something else, and they said the most difficult it's boring, and so you're left to devices, and things begin to come up. And so, just like a marathon runner, um, in the beginning, there is I need to stop. I'm tired. I'm sore. I need to. My back hurts. My feet hurt. When's this going to end? It's too. Once you get through all that, then like the runner who enjoys running, who does it because they love it, uh, moving from loneliness to okay. So, Yield's ready. I have just going to start to play some music here. Just get a bit more volume. And just to make it a little bit more challenging, uh, to minimize the screen. So you'll be seeing the black Energetic Arts logo. Ideally, you will have your eyes closed and be either in a darkened room or have So breathe deeply. Slowly. Feel deeply. The infinite. And moment. Yes. Your awareness. Net. Space. Of what it feels like to be alone with endless space all around you. Free actions. All the obligations, responsibilities, and all of the expectations. Take a deep breath now and relax even more. And allow yourself to feel deeply the feelings that you feel. relax. Focus. Become present. Feel connected. Where do you begin? Where do you end? Can you become aware that with each ending there is a new beginning? And that everything that has a beginning has an ending. Where is the edge of who you believe yourself to be? And how do you know that what's beyond it isn't you too? Where do events begin and where do they end? And just as one event ends, another begins. And just as one begins, another one ends. And so where's the line between a beginning and an ending, or an ending and a beginning? Can you see that it may all be connected? One big happening. Just like, do you begin with your thoughts or your feelings, or inside your body or outside of your body? Where does your energy begin and where does it end? And if you can say to yourself that I can move my hand, then you can also raise the sun. How big are you? And how do you really know if you're the effect or the cause? And who is it that's asking the questions and giving the answers? And who's observing them? And where do the questions come from? Can you connect with it? Or maybe you already are. And just when you think you have a handle on who you are, you immediately notice that which you are not. And if you can do that, then it's very easy to accept that one can't exist without the other. Just like black needs white, up needs down, inside needs outside. And so you're all of it. So can you see now that loneliness is just a program contained inside complete connectedness? And that you couldn't understand what complete connectedness was if it wasn't for loneliness. And so maybe the more lonely that you feel, the more connected you are. And the more connected you are, the easier it is to feel loneliness. Because you're it. There is only one. And just like you can feel lonely in a crowd of people, you can also feel completely connected to everything, all alone. Feel the coherence and connections connected everywhere, all at once. All the way back to the source. Become aware of the connections. Feel connected. You are connected. Stay with it. Relax into it. Become part of it. You are it. It is you. Slowly now, gently now, bring your awareness back to your body. Back to your mind. Back to this space. Back to this time. Slowly wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And we're back. Come back. Let me know in the chat feed that you're still with me. And while I just talk a little bit about the experience here, feel free to jump in and let me know how you're feeling, what you're thinking, if you have any questions. Take your time. And so I just want to use a metaphor here to, and to go into the purpose of this particular exercise. Is remember, I'm preparing the mind and body to be able to realign and reorientate with different potentials in the multi-timeline universe, for lack of a better term. And so to be able to do that, we need to be able to go out of body, go into the void, tune our energy into different energy signatures, lock that energy in and come back into the time-space reality in the new body, in the new mind. And to do that, we need to get out first. And then while we're there, we need to be able to change the energy. And so this training process is a bit like the other day I went to a rock climbing gym, and you see all these different people on different levels, on different parts of the wall, doing different problems and different routes. And sometimes it's not about, getting to the next grade or getting to the next problem, because like I said, in that multiple timeline reality with infinite potentials, there are infinite routes, there are infinite problems, and there are infinite levels. So just like, the scales go up infinitely and down infinitely and out infinitely and in infinitely, it doesn't really matter too much where you're at. It's not about the destination, it's about the skill to be able to move from one to the other. And so instead of worrying about getting the task done or getting to the top of the wall or completing the route of the problem, solving the problem, what we do is we change our approach and we use the problem or the route or the experience to tell us what we need to work on. And so if you go to pretty much any rock climbing gym, in the world, they've got the walls everywhere and different types of walls, but then they've got a workout area or a training area. And I love this space. Funnily enough, it's where everyone meets and everyone, talks and connects and communicates and, shares their experiences and their ideas. Because pretty soon, when you come up against a certain problem on the wall and you're honest, you can either do the route or you can't, because you've either got the technique and the strength and the flexibility and the balance to do it, or you don't. And if you do, great, do it. And if you don't, then you know exactly what you need to focus on. And so, if it's your grip strength, for example, then, you need to work, that's what you work on. Or, you have something like this, a little tool that we devise. If you need core strength, then you would, get on the wheel and work your core. If it's you're strong and you've got great grip strength, but you need to balance better, then you would use something to help train your balancing. And if you have aches and pains, then you would start to work on body maintenance and flexibility, okay, as an example. So sometimes, what you'll notice in the sessions that we do is some are very technical, and we get into the nuts and bolts and the nittis grittis and the nuances and the scales and all that sort of stuff, and we start to play with different things. And then other times, like tonight, we just go in and see how we fare in the environment, in the space, okay, and see what comes up. Ultimately, you want to get to that point where you're comfortable in that space, being completely alone, because that's like neutral. If you can get comfortable there, then it's a lot easier to come out and go back into another timeline, another energy signature. And if we go to the rock climbing metaphor, you've got climbers from all varying degrees, but even if a climber is that good and that skilled to be able to traverse every problem in that gym, it's not long before they reset the problems, or the climber's looking for another gym where there's something new to test their skills against. And so in the beginning, you're trying to overcome your limitations. But as you practice this more and more, you start to seek them out. And things like going into open space and training in open space really flushes these things to the surface. And like the topic suggests, loneliness is one of those things that needs to be flushed out. And we need to get comfort. Or at least, like in the story of Lawrence of Arabia with the match, even though it's uncomfortable, we get to the point where we don't mind that it's uncomfortable. We enjoy the suffering. So okay, so you're getting all these images, you're getting stories playing out, you're getting mind chatter, all these sorts of things. It's not easy to just stay in that deep, dark space. Often when I have lost myself in that and been able to totally relax, and this is just my experience, I'm usually interrupted by the kick in the meditation to come back to my body. And sometimes it's like, oh no, I just want to stay there a little bit longer. And other times it's like, oh wow, where was I? How long have I been out? And I'm checking my watch. But this is another thing that this is good that this has come up, because it leads into, there's two parts to this. One is that all that imagery and all that stuff that comes up to the surface, that's what's known as the first resting place in meditation, where, it's like base camp on your way to the peak summit. You base camp, middle camp, what is it, high camp, top camp, summit, whatever, on the way to Everest, for example. And so, this is part of the route to getting deeper into yourself. And the other part is, the concept of death is, when you die, you go to sleep in this big black space and you never wake up. But what you find is that when you actually go in there, um, it's hard to stay in there without something coming up. And at first, if you're projecting these images and it's like a conscious thought, then you want to move past that. But um, later, once you've cleared a lot of that away, when things start to emerge from the darkness, that's when you start to be able to tune into packets of information, and you can start to download things. And this is where people get a lot of insight. They get into things like remote viewing, accessing different abilities, what we would call psychic or reserve human abilities, um, where you can start to become, maybe telepathic. And so, when we get into this realm, the rules of physics change. You're not bound by space time anymore. The mind is free from those dimensions. And codes um, in the mind energy body, it gives us access to a whole host of new abilities that we perceive as they're inherent in the Matrix program. And so this is what we're training towards, is to get access to these, have experiences in these areas. You don't have to wonder whether it's true or not anymore. You have an experience that's irrefutable, that's undisputable, that you can't explain away. And then you get into the business of training that new skill set into your neurology and your physiology and your energy. And from there, you develop that skill and become really precise and predictable, where you can call it up on command and produce a certain outcome. About They talked about, manifesting a cup of coffee or a car space, classes to get to start playing with this new dimension of tuning in possible. And so, in the workshops that I did last year, for animals, because they were fun. Who cares if it works? Great, and if it doesn't work, so what? It's sort of like going to the great, but if you don't, who cares? It's not like the prizes of any great. So does that make sense? Does that help? Um, does that help you? So does that help? Is that clear? Do we have a connection problem? And one really good, thank you. One really good example of receiving information. Um, there was, I don't know if you've ever seen the film with Tom Cruise called The Last Samurai, and there's the scene where I can't remember the actor's name. The Japanese samurai is meditating, and he's in this beautiful, serene Japanese garden, and he's meditating there, and he sees an image of a white tiger fighting, and he comes out of like he's jerked out of meditation, and and he's received some kind of message, some kind of download. He's tapped into a stream of consciousness and received it. And then later in the movie, how his character and Tom Cruise's character meet is, Tom Cruise is in this battle and he's surrounded by all the samurai and he's fighting for his death, fighting for his life, and he's got this flag with on the banner is a white tiger, and so it's an example of receiving information from a future time stream, or perhaps even an example of a remote view. Yeah, I know the connection's not that great, in and out Wi-Fi around the world. Hey, it's pretty good considering technology and all. But wouldn't it be great if you could just tune in and connect, and we get to the point where we don't need the computer anymore? We can just go into the field, meet in the field. This is where we get into lucid dreaming and uh, group dreaming, group lucid dreaming, next level stuff. But we can push for that sort of thing, but what I'm trying to do here is clean the slate, get everything ready, get all your skills and abilities up. So when you're faced with the next task, the next training session, the problem, it's all there, and you can just work on the problem itself rather than your ability to do the problem. So Bruce Lee used to say, everyone wants to learn the techniques, but no one wants to do the training to do the technique. Everyone wants the results of manifesting things, but learning the skill of manifesting isn't that attractive. Everyone wants to be able to access all sorts of things, digitally and through technology, but not everyone wants to know how a computer works or how the internet works. Next time we meet together in the field for training. Well, yeah. Hey, you look, all the technology we're using here is prosthetics for what is naturally innate inside the bioenergetic system of what we call the brain and body. We just, we use these as training wheels, as, walking sticks and crutches to get ourselves up to speed to accept the possibility of being able to communicate across time and space around the world, and be able to transfer and send and receive information. So, how was that, guys? Was that, are you learning? Was that interesting? Just let me know through the chat. Oh, by the way, good news. I think we've finally cracked the next level of getting the open session Q&As ready on Sunday. And I'm also doing a deal where it's $15 for the whole month. So you can tune in every week, and you can do the morning session or the afternoon session or both. You get access to all of it for the whole month. I just figure, why not? Let's get into this properly, and let's, remove the hurdles of having to register every week and blah, blah, blah. So having said that though, when you do come to the Q&A, based on like what has come up for you, and what you're training on, like if it's grip strength as the metaphor goes, or if it's balance or whatever it is for you, bring that stuff to the Q&A open session, because that's what we're going to work on. I'm not going to pick a topic. We're just going to get into it free flow, and I'm going to work with you where you're at depending on what you need to work on. And finally, before we wrap up, next week we're getting into life hacks and hot seats. So if you're up for it, I'm going to open up the video and the mic, and we're going to work on little areas and techniques and problems together in real time. And not only am I going to do it with you, but I'm going to break it down, and I'm going to go into the approach and frames and techniques that I'm using to do that. So bring that stuff with you to the hot seat as well. So, don't have to bring up your deep-seated trauma from a past life in Egypt when you were the Pharaoh and you were betrayed. But, if you got something that you're working on or you're really interested in on the material that we've covered before, or something that you want to clean up or tweak or refine, bring that to the hot seat, and we'll work on that next week. How does that sound? Good. All right, guys. Unless there's any more questions, we'll wrap up there. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate you sticking it out and going through the gauntlet. Being a pioneer is it's a pretty big bloody deal in my opinion. So it's respect. And if there's nothing more, we'll see you next week, and look out for the emails about the open sessions. Yeah, hot seat pushes you. It's real time, real stuff. None of this believing we're going to know. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks very much. And we'll see you all next time. Bye for now.